Hi guys. When I left off yesterday, Omri and Patrick had just sent Little Bear down into the floor to look for the key. They think the rat or had fallen in because they were looking for his brother's rat. So we'll see what happens today. Omri pulled the lampshade off the bedside lamp and thrust the bulb down into the hole. He couldn't get his head in to watch, and Little Bear went out of sight almost at once. "Is there a way through?" he whispered down the tunnel. "Yes," came Little Bear's voice. "Big hole. I go through. Omri give light." Omri pushed the light down as far as he could, but the base of the lamp made it stick. "Can you see anything?" he whispered as loudly as he dared. There was no answer. He and Patrick knelt there for what felt like an age. There wasn't a sound. Then Patrick said suddenly, "Did he take his bow and arrows?" "No, why?" What if he meets the rat? Omri had totally forgotten about the rat in the excitement of realizing what had happened to the key. Now he felt a strange jerk in his chest, as if his heart had hiccuped. He bent his head till his face was in the hole. He could smell the dust. The bright bulb was between him and the place where Little Bear had presumably gone through a hole in the joist in the next section of the underfloor. Pages are sticking. Okay. A hole? What could make a hole right through a joist? A joist is a board or a floorboard. What else but a rat gnawing away all day? A rat at this moment out on his night prowl. A hungry rat who hadn't eaten for 24 hours. A pink-eyed, needle-toothed, omnivorous giant rat. "Little Bear," Omri called frantically into the blankness. "Come back, come back." Utter silence. And then he heard something, but it wasn't Little Bear's voice. It was the scuttering sound of a rodent's hard little hairless feet on lathe and plaster. "Little Bear!" Omri, it was a voice from the room below. "What are you doing up there?" It was his mother's voice. Then quite distinctly he heard his father's voice. "I can hear that blasted rat pattering about overhead. It's probably keeping the boys awake." "I'd better go up," said his mother. A door closed below, and they heard her coming up the stairs. Even this dire prospect hardly had power to do more than push Omri's desperation one stage farther. He probably wouldn't have moved from his place on the floor if Patrick hadn't acted swiftly. "Quick, light off, into bed!" He pulled Patrick up, snatched the lamp out of his hand, and switched it off. The candle was still down the hole. Patrick shoved the floorboard roughly back into position and moved the carpet so it was more or less covered the boards if you didn't look closely. Then he pushed Omri into his bed, covered him up, and footsteps were nearly at the door, and had just flung himself down on the folding bed when the door opened. Omri lay there with his eyes squeezed shut, thinking, "Don't put the light on, don't put the light on." The light was coming into the room from the landing, but not enough to see anything very much. His mother stood there for what seemed like 100 years, and finally she whispered, "Are you boys asleep?" Needless to say, she got no reply. "Omri?" she tried once more. Then after another 100 years, it seemed like, during which Omri imagined Little Bear bitten in half by a rat right underneath where he was laying, the door closed and, again, leaving them in darkness. Wait, breathed Patrick. It was torture to wait. The rat had stopped moving when all the scuffling and steps had started. That was something, but now it was quiet again. Omri imagined it creeping towards its prey, its pink nose twitching, its albino whiskers trembling hungrily. Oh, how could he have let Little Bear go down there? Boone's death would at least not have been his fault, but if Little Bear was to die, Omri knew he would never forgive himself. At long last, the living room door closed, and both boys stole out of bed again. Patrick reached the light first. Omri grabbed it, but Patrick insisted on looking first to see if Boone was still breathing. He was. They rolled the carpet back and lifted the board again, terrified that each movement would attract the grown-ups down below. The homemade candle was burning away in the gloom like a little torch in a disused mine, throwing out eerie light down the tunnel. Omri lay down flat. He didn't dare raise his voice, but he softly called, "Little Bear, are you there?" Come back. You're in terrible danger. Silence. Oh gosh, why doesn't he come? Omri whispered frenziedly. At the moment, they did hear something. It was hard to identify the sound. It was the rat, all right, but what was it doing? There was no running around, just sort of tiny shock, as if it had made one short, sudden movement. A pounce? Omri's heart was in his mouth. Then there were other sounds. If he had not got used to straining his ears to catch the voices of the little men, he might not have heard it. But he did hear it, and hope nearly lifted him off the ground. It was a faint, light scrambling sound, like the sound of a small body getting through the hole in a hurry. Omri pulled the lamp back out of the hole and thrust his arm in instead, his hand open. Almost at once he felt Little Bear run into it. Omri closed his fingers as if something warm and furry, just as something warm and furry brushed against their backs. He snatched his arm out, grazing his knuckles against the splintery wood. There was something else in his hand, something cold and knobbly, twice as heavy as Little Bear. He opened his fingers, and both boys leaned over to look. Sitting on Omri's palm, filthy and bedraggled but triumphant, was Little Bear with his arms cradled. Trailing cobwebs and a red satin ribbon. Was the key missing? You've done it! Oh, Little Bear, good for you! Now quick! Or was the key missing? There he was with the missing key. You've done it, oh Little Bear, good for you. Now quick, said Omri. Patrick, get the candle up and put the floor back. I'll find the Red Cross man. Reckless now, they switched the top light on. Patrick was being as quiet as he could, replaced the floorboard and the carpet, and while Omri looked through the figures jumbled up in the biscuit tin. Luckily, the Army medical orderly was right on top, still holding the precious doctor's bag, while Little Bear, meanwhile, stood beside the pallet bed on which Boone was lying, staring down at him, still clutching the key in his arms. Omri took it from him, thrust the plastic man into the cupboard, and turned the key. He made himself count to 10 while Patrick watched, pop-eyed and scarcely breathing. Then he opened the door. There stood his old friend Tommy, his bag at his feet, rubbing his eyes and frowning around him. His face cleared as he saw Omri. Well, if it ain't you again. I don't half pick my moments to drop off to sleep, I must say. Thundering great Minnie winning overhead, though I thought I was a goner. What's a Minnie? Said Patrick in a croaky voice. What? Another of you? Asked Tommy, gaping. I must have eaten too much cheese for me dinner. Shouldn't give us cheese before a big attack. Very hard on the stomach, especially when it's churned up anyway with nerves. What's a Minnie? It's all named for a mini woofer. That's one of them big German shells. Makes an horrible row, they do, even before they land. A sort of whistle, and it gets louder and louder, and then kerboom! Them blokes with my job has to pick themselves up and runs as quick as you like where it fell. If it fell in a trench, to take care of the wounded. We've got a wounded man here we want you to take care of, said Omri quickly. Oh, yes, the old redskin again, is it? No, it's another one. Could you step onto my hand? Omri lifted him to where Boone lay, and Tommy at once knelt down beside him and began professional examination. Ooh, he's in a bad way, he said after a few moments. Could do a blood transfusion, really. I'll have to take this bandage off. Look at his wound. He was cutting it off with a minute pair of scissors as he spoke. As the bandage opened up, the anxious watcher saw that he had a tuft of tissue was now red with blood. But Tommy said, Bleeding stopped. That's one good thing. What was it, a bullet? An arrow, said Omri, and Little Bear shivered all over. Oh, yes, of course, I see that now. Well, I'm not much with arrow wounds. Head's not still there, I hope. No, it was pulled out. He meant the arrowhead wasn't, hopefully not still in there. Let's see. Good. Lucky it missed his heart. Well, I'll see what I can do here, mates. He got the hypodermic needle out of his bag and fiddled with it for a moment, then plunged the needle into Boone's chest. After that, he stitched up the wound, put a field dressing on it, and got Little Bear to help him peel off the rest of the old blood-stained Band-Aid. "You a pal of his, are you?" he asked the Indian. Little Bear stared at him, but didn't deny it. "Then look here, when he wakes up, you give him these here pills. They're iron, you see, build him up. And these, well, they're for the pain. What we have to hope is there won't be any infection." "We need penicillin for him," said Patrick, who had once had a bad cut on his foot that had turned septic. That means it got infected. Tommy looked at him blankly. "Penicillin? What's that?" Omri nudged Patrick. They hadn't discovered it in his time, he whispered. "Best thing I can think is to give him a drop of brandy," said Tommy, and, taking out a flask, poured something down Boone's throat. "Look there," he said cheerfully. "He's getting a better color already. He'll open his eyes soon. I wouldn't wonder. Keep him warm. That's the ticket. Now I must be getting back, waking up, I mean. If that there Minnie's landed, I'll be in demand, and no mistake." Omri carried him back to the cupboard. "Tommy," he said, what if the Minnie had fallen on you?" Couldn't have done, could it? If it had have, I wouldn't be having this here dream, would I? I'd be singing with an heavenly choir," meaning heavenly choir. "Cheerabee, hurry up and shut that door. I can hear him calling for a stretcher bearer already." Omri smiled gratefully at him. He hated to send him back, but obviously he wanted to go. "Goodbye, Tommy, thanks, and good luck." And he shut the door. From the other end of the table, Little Bear suddenly called, "Omri, come! Boone, open eyes! Boone, wake up!" Omri and Patrick turned. Sure enough, there was Boone, staring up into Little Bear's face. "What happened?" He got out in a faint, shaky voice. Nobody wanted to tell him, but at last Little Bear had to confess. "I shoot," he said. "What you talking about, you crazy Indian? I asked you what happened in the picture. Did them settlers beat the Indians and get where they was aiming to get to? Or did the Indians carry them off the women and scalp the men?" And Little Bear drew his breath. His head, which had been hanging in shame, came up sharply, and to Omri's horror, he actually saw his hand go to his belt for his knife. Luckily, it wasn't there, but he jumped to his feet. "Boone, shut mouth! No insult Indian braves, or Little Bear shoot again. This time kill good, take scalp, hang on pole. Boone's scalp too dirty to hang on belt of an Indian chief." He snatched his chief's cloak off Boone's body and swirled it proudly back onto his shoulders. Omri was shocked, but Patrick was laughing so hard he could scarcely hold it in. But he controlled himself enough to wrap Boone up in a cutout blanket to keep him warm. Omri snatched Little Bear up between finger and thumb. "Oh, so you're a chief again, are you?" he hissed furiously. "Chiefs ought to know when to keep their tempers. Here." He picked up the broken headdress on the floor and fitted it lopsided on Little Bear's head. "Now, Chief, have a good look at yourself," and he held Little Bear up before the mirror. Little Bear took one look and put his face in his hands. "Just you remember what you did to your friend." "Not friend, enemy," muttered Little Bear, but the anger had gone out of him. "Whatever he is, you've got a job to do. Where are those pills? You're to see that he gets them. We can't even see them, so it's up to you. And when Boone is better, you know what you're going to do? You're going to make him your blood brother." Little Bear shot him a quick and startled look. "Blood brother?" "You both make little cuts, and then you tie them together so the blood mingles. And after that, you can't be enemies again, ever, because you're brothers. It's an old Indian custom." Little Bear looked baffled. "Not Indian custom." "I'm sure it is. I saw it. It was in a film I saw." "White man idea. Not Indian." "Well, couldn't you do it just this once?" Little Bear was silent for a moment, thinking. Then Omri saw the crafty look he knew of old coming onto the Indian's face. "Good," he said. "Little Bear, give Boone medicine. Make him my brother when strong." And Omri put plastic in box. Sorry. I'm going to read that again and make sure it's Little Bear's voice there. "Good," he said. "Little Bear, give Boone medicine. Make him my brother when strong. And Omri put plastic in box, make wife real for little bear? Not tonight, said Omri firmly. We've had enough excitement. Tonight you stand guard over Boone. Give him his pills, and when he needs them, drinks of water and all that. Tomorrow, if everything's all right, I'll bring your woman to life, and that's a promise. And that's the end of chapter 15. So we'll start chapter 16 tomorrow, and we'll probably finish out. I'm going to see how long chapter 16 is. Actually, if I read quite a bit, it's not going to be enough. I'll finish up. We'll start chapter 16 tomorrow, and then we'll finish it Monday. Kind of was hoping to get through it this week. But anyhow, hope you guys are good. Stay safe.